What's going on, guys? So I wanted to make part 2 of the video I uploaded last week on how to figure out a starting point for your calories and macronutrients so you can more accurately hit your goals. If you haven't seen that video yet, I just posted it last week. I had a good response to it, so I'm very happy about that. So if you haven't seen that one, I definitely recommend watching that one first, because this one right here is going to be the follow-up. It's a lot shorter because pretty much everything we had to cover in the first video is going to be the bulk of how to start tracking your calories, so that one's a little more longer because you got to give some explanation. This one's going to be how and when to adjust your macros for when you're stalling so that you can keep reaching towards your goals, whether that be to gain weight, lose weight, or even maintain your body weight. We're going to talk about all those things right now. Quick video, but I do think this is important because once people figure out what their calories should be, that's not going to last for a long time. Eventually you plateau based on your energy levels or maybe based on your activity levels. So we need to go over, now that you are counting your calories, which is awesome, great start. How can we keep our progress going, and what do we need to do to make sure that happens? So that's what the point of this video is. So I think that when is probably the more important topic to talk about first. So I listed some options here. So if your progress has stalled in any capacity, that is when you need to start figuring out, all right, do I need to eat less calories or more calories depending on what your goal is? So even though body weight, I tell all my clients, it's just a number on the scale. You don't want to get too wrapped up in numbers. It is an indicator as far as weight loss and weight gain goes, as a marker for our progress. So if your goal is to lose some weight, then we need to see that number on the scale go down. But like I said, you don't want to be tied to this number. So it doesn't need to be something that has to go down every single week. But over the course of a few weeks, you definitely should see a steady decline if your goal is to lose weight. And the opposite is true. If you are trying to gain weight, you should see a steady increase in the scale going up. But you need to make sure that you want to do these things very slow, because we don't want to starve ourselves and let our energy crash and damage our metabolism. And at the same time, if you're trying to gain weight, you don't want to do it too fast because you don't want to put on too much unwanted body fat. So weight is definitely a very good indicator on if your calories that you are eating are enough and sufficient for your goals. So that's number one. Second one is training. If you are in a caloric deficit for too long and you notice your training is, you're not getting maybe the pumps that you were, you can't hit the same weights that you were, your energy is just down, and your training is starting to suffer from that, then that may be an indicator that your calories are too low and you need to bump them up a little bit. So I do think feeling out how you feel in the gym, your training, your activity levels, if those things are suffering because of your diet, then you need to figure out you might be eating too low of calories depending on what your goal is. And if your performance starts to suffer in the gym, exercise is going to create that energy balance. So we don't want to make sure that we're eating too little of calories, because then you're going to start suffering in the gym, and we don't want that. So you need to figure out if you're eating too little of calories and you notice that, a weight, say on the bench press, a weight that you can press normally comfortably for 6 to 8 reps is now getting harder and harder, even just for 3 to 5 reps, then, one day it happens, maybe, sleep, dehydration, there's a lot of different factors. But if this is a constant thing, then it might be because you're not eating enough food to fuel your workout. So I think performance is definitely important. And the other one, I know I said energy with training, but just energy in everyday life. Like if you wake up and you're always exhausted, or on the other side, you're having trouble sleeping, you can't get to bed, that could be because of your diet. So your hormones could be out of whack a little bit. If you're not eating enough food, you might stress your body out, and it actually may hold on to body fat because of that. So making sure your day-to-day activity levels, just doing day-to-day chores, work, like are you too tired, are you lethargic, are you not looking forward to going to the gym, these are definitely indicators that you may not be eating enough. So I think those are the three, in my opinion, those are probably the top 3 reasons you would want to probably look at your calories and figure out, all right, now it's time to adjust. So that goes into the next step on how do we actually do that. So no matter what your goal is, if you want to gain or lose weight, I always recommend, at least in my experience, is to do everything very slow. I know we want immediate results, especially in today's world, but it is very important that you do things slow, because if you are trying to get lean and you decide, all right, I'm going to cut 500 calories, 600 calories, however much of a deficit you want to be in, if you do it too fast, you will definitely lose some weight, but you are going to plateau faster. You are going to feel like shit while you're doing so, and you could possibly damage your metabolism. You don't want to cut your calories too low, because then your body's going to get used to eating at a lower caloric intake, and then now your maintenance levels, what you used to maintain your body weight on is now going to be a lot lower, which isn't good, because now if you ever need to eat a little bit more food, you'll put on weight. So we want to make sure we don't do that and damage your metabolism. But doing everything slow is very important. And the same thing when you're trying to put on some muscle, you're trying to bulk up a little bit, you don't want to do it too fast, because then you're going to put on unwanted body fat. Now, if you put on 20 pounds over the course of a winter and, you know, your body fat just went up, you know, 15 pounds, instead of putting on 20 pounds with 15 being at fat, why don't you do this nice and slow and try to just put on the 5 pounds of muscle? Obviously, when you're in a caloric surplus, you have to understand that you are going to put on a little bit of body fat, but if we can minimize the amount of fat you put on, that's going to be probably your best bet, so that when it does come time to lose some weight and cut up a little bit, it won't be as difficult to take that weight off, and then you can retain some muscle mass when you're doing so. So making sure we do everything nice and slow for steady progress. Now, the way we do that, I read an article a long time ago and it stuck with me. I've always have done it this way. Every week when I need to make a cut, if I see the scale has stopped moving, then I know I'm going to have to do some type of change to my macronutrients. And the way I do that is usually subtracting anywhere between 5 to 8% of my total calories. 5 to 8% in the grand scheme of things, that is a very low number. That can be anywhere between 1 to 200 calories, depending on how high your caloric intake is day to day. But I really like that number. That seems to be a good sweet spot on how to do things, because sometimes the scale might not be moving and you need to make just a small adjustment to get that scale moving again. That's the goal. We don't care. I don't care how much you lose over the course of 2 weeks. I want to see how much weight you lose over the course of maybe 4 months. So if we, as long as we get to the end goal, that's the most important. How we get there is also important, but we don't want to do it too fast, like I said. So doing nice slow cuts over the course of a longer period of time is going to get you probably better results in the long run than if you do these giant cuts over a short period of time. So for an example here, 5 to 8% of my total calories, I mostly cut those through carbs and fats. I don't really like to cut my protein too much. I said in the previous video, most people can benefit for 1 gram per pound of body weight. If you're in a cut, you can probably even go a little bit higher, because it will help you retain a little bit of muscle mass. It'll help you, it's satiating, so it'll help you fill up a little more. I do think that protein is an important macronutrient. I don't think it's maybe as important as some people make it out to be, and I do think it's more important than some people make it out to be. So I try to cut most of my calories through carbs and fats. But with that being said, carbohydrates are demonized in today's world. I don't think carbs are the enemy. I think overeating is the enemy. If you choose to do that through carbohydrates, that's what makes carbs the problem. It's not the macronutrient carbs. It's not, you know, sweet potatoes, rice. It's not pastas. It's not these things that are bad for you. But when you have too many things in abundance, that's what causes weight gain, and that can even happen with eating too much protein. It's just calories in general. Typically, people just seem to overeat on carbs, and that's why people kind of demonize the carbohydrate group. So I try to make cuts pretty evenly. In the last video, I took a middle of the road approach on all the equations to show you. That's kind of how I like to do things. Sometimes I'll maybe cut carbs a little more than I'll cut fats. I preferably just enjoy fats more. I like peanut butter. I like avocados. I like things that are fattier. I like fattier pieces of meat. I can go without having to have rice and pastas and all those type of things and potatoes, but I know the majority of people probably like those things. So I like to do a nice even cut depending on how low the macronutrients are. I don't ever like to see fats go too low. I always like to keep them 20 to 30% of my total caloric intake. They're very helpful with regulating hormones, so I never want to see them cut too much. So I try to make things even as possible, but if there comes to a point where things are getting too low and you don't want to make cuts from fats anymore, I might cut a little more from carbs, and there might be a point where I have to cut through protein. But for the most part, carbs and fats. So I use myself as an example. If you watched that video last week, which if you haven't, please definitely go back and watch that. But I found out that based on my basic metabolic rate and my activity level, I should be maintaining my weight roughly at 2,650 calories. And the way we broke that up in the last video was 190 grams of protein, 75 grams of fat, and 300 grams of carbs. When you do the reverse math on those, that will come out to 2,650 calories. So if I wanted to make slow, steady cuts into my calories, I would probably go towards the lower end of the spectrum. So for my example here, I use 5% of the calories. So if I weigh 160 pounds and I am sticking to these macronutrients and I'm eating 2,650 calories, 2 weeks goes by and I am still 160 pounds. I made sure I stuck to these macros to a T. I know there's no discrepancies. That is exactly how much I ate. My weight didn't change. My goal is to lose weight. I need to make a small cut in my calories. So I took 5% of 2,650 calories, and that comes out to only 130 calories. So that may be enough just to see the scale start moving. It might not be. This is just all trial and error. So with that small cut, 130 calories, I told you I want to do this evenly. I'm going to take some of those calories through fat. I'm going to take some of these calories through carbohydrates. So what I did was 130 calories divided in half would mean 65 calories are coming from carbohydrates and 65 calories are coming through fats. And like we said in the last video, for every 1 gram of carbohydrate, it is 4 calories. So I divided 65 by 4 and I came out to 15 grams of carbs. 9 calories for every gram of fat we eat, so 65 divided by 9 is 7. I like to round these to more, fives and zeros numbers to make this a little easier for my example. So I actually came out to 16 and 7, so I rounded that to 15. This 7 I'm going to actually round up to a 10. And now my new number here, if you can see that down at the screen, I know it's small. I'll try to put a little screenshot in there, but my new caloric intake is now going to be 2,520 calories, and that's now going to be divided up. I'm keeping the protein at 190 grams. I cut my fat from 75 down to 65 grams, so it's a small cut. 10 grams of fat is not a lot, but that is 90 calories right there from just the fat, because I increased it a little bit from the 7. And then 285 grams of carbs that are now down from 300 grams of carbs. So 130 calories, I mean, that's literally equated to, that's like a banana. That's like eating a banana. But that small cut in calories might be just enough to get the scale moving. So after another week of weighing myself, maybe I weigh myself 3 or 4 times throughout the week and take the average. If I find out the average number that I came out to for my body weight was not 160 pounds or lighter, then I know I need to make a cut again. So if I weigh 160 after a week of doing these numbers, I didn't make a big enough cut, I'll probably try to make another 5% cut. And if you want to be a little bit more aggressive about it, you could make up to an 8% cut, but like I said, I like to do things nice and slow. I'd rather work out harder in the gym to create that energy balance than keep cutting my calories. That's the same thing I like to do with my clients. If you're working out twice a week, before I cut your calories, is it possible that you can go to a 3rd day a week? Or can we add some cardio in at the end of these sessions on these 2 days that you're doing? So create that energy balance with your training first before we cut your foods. You're going to be better in the long run. You're not going to be miserable. You get to enjoy your life a little more. And this is for general population. Obviously, if you are training for a bodybuilding show or some type of physique show, then we probably need to make cuts more consistently. But for general population people, this equation seems to work really well. 5 to 8%, small cuts. But think about this. If I cut 130 calories and the scale moves just a little bit, half a pound, I'm going to ride that half a pound out until I notice the scale plateaus. So if I lose weight at 2,520 calories, then I'm going to keep eating that amount of food until the scale stops moving. When that scale stops moving, I'm going to go back to this 5 to 8% equation, and I'm going to do that all over again until I reach my desired body fat or weight on the scale. But doing those slow cuts, that's really important. Now, if your goal is to gain weight, we would just do the opposite. So I would take 5 to 8% of 2,650. That comes out to 130 calories. I'll actually add that to the 2,650 calories. So now we'll be over 2,700 calories with that. And instead of subtracting 15 grams of carbs and 10 grams of fat, I'll now add them on. So my new number, if I was trying to gain weight, would be 190 grams of protein, 85 grams of fat, and 315 grams of carbs. So it's literally the same thing. It just depends. You either want to add or subtract. But I think that is a sufficient amount of calories to cut week to week, because if you cut 130 calories this week, 2 weeks later, your weight stalls, you have to do it again. Now over the course of a month, you just cut 260 calories. It's a nice, slow, steady gain. I would say shooting for anywhere between half a pound to a pound a week is a pretty good gradual decrease in body weight. If you notice you're losing 2, 3, 4 pounds, if you're very overweight, you might see this in the beginning. You're losing water weight, you're cutting out unnecessary body fat, but eventually you should taper off probably, half a pound to a pound 2 pounds is okay to lose, but it depends. You want to make sure you're not losing weight too fast because you don't want to burn through any type of muscle tissue. And the same thing when we're putting weight on. It's a lot harder to put on muscle. So if you're putting on 2 pounds a week, you're definitely 1000%. Unless you're brand new and on gear, you're probably not putting on 2 pounds a week in muscle. So that's not possible to do it that fast. So making sure you make nice, slow, steady gains. So I hope that was helpful. I tried to make this one a little shorter, but I'm looking at the time in the corner there, stressing out that it says 15 minutes. I was hoping this was going to be 5, but I have a lot to say. If you didn't want to watch to the end, hey, then you must not care about your body fat. But thank you for watching. If you did make it this far, if you have any questions, please message me. Leave a comment, like, share it, do all those things. I'm going to try to start making a lot of YouTube videos, so anything will help, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope this helps.